Top 10 rides at Disneyland in California. Number 10, Autopia. Autopia has always been a favorite of mine since I was literally 3 years old. I'm lucky enough to grow up going to Disneyland. They've done a really good job of updating Autopia over the years. In comparison to Tomorrowland Speedway at Walt Disney World, Autopia is updated with really nice planting and foliage, a little bit of scenery with like some robots and a little bit more of a futuristic theme now. 4 different pathways you can go down, add a little bit of diversity. It's definitely not the most amazing ride you're going to ride while being at Disneyland, but it definitely makes this top 10 list for sure just because of its uniqueness and the way it's been upkept very well. Number 9, Storybook Land. This is a ride I've overlooked a lot for many, many years. And recently, the past couple of years, I've started riding it, and it really is a neat little attraction. I think it's kind of a hidden gem of Disneyland. You don't really hear about people talking about this ride that much. Essentially, the idea is you go through all these like little mini versions of various Disney like movies and IPs. See all these like little mini models of the castles, of all the hills. It blends a lot of IPs into one ride. Seeing like all the mini models just makes a really fun experience. They did a really good job at it. Number 8 is the Jungle Cruise. There are a couple things I really like about this ride. One is that Walt Disney actually touched this and he built it, and his vision was implanted on this ride. And if you get a really good skipper on the ride, it can be really funny and a really enjoyable time. This isn't a ride I get on every time I go to the park, but if it has a low line and I'm feeling like hitting one of the classics, I always go on it. If you get a good skipper, it will be a really enjoyable ride experience. Number 7, Pirates of the Caribbean. Another ride that Walt Disney touched and had a hand in designing. He actually didn't live to see the final result, but the rumor has it that the Imagineers actually pushed him through Pirates of the Caribbean during its development in like a mattress. And the ride itself is very enjoyable. Music's good, the scenes are good. I like the little quiet kind of like serene area that you pass before you actually go down to the drop and get into like the scenes of the ride. It can get a little slow and boring during some of the parts. Obviously, this was one of the earlier of Disney's park-related creations. But again, with Walt Disney actually touching and having a hand in building this ride, and some of the other like scenes that I really like about this ride, that's kind of where it gets this number 7 spot. Number 6 is the Haunted Mansion. Hearing about what they actually had to go through to make this ride is pretty insane. You had these giant computers, and it was, for the time it was made in like the 60s, it was a huge, huge feat of design and engineering capabilities. That could be a whole video within itself. But seeing what they were able to dream up back then and seeing how they've kind of adapted that to future technologies has been a really cool experience. For example, they have this like headless ghost animatronic, which uses this projection technology. When they first dreamed up this kind of animatronic, there weren't any projections small enough to project a head onto this like smaller portion onto the thing he's holding, so it ended up getting scratched. But as the technology got better, they were able to implement this. The ride itself is also a classic with its pre-show, no windows, no doors, walking down that hallway with the marble heads following you, all the puns, the doom buggies, all the tombstones that have like names that are puns on them in the queue. There's just a lot of really cool little elements of this ride that I like, and all of those combined really make an enjoyable ride experience from a normal guest perspective and like a theme park enthusiast guest perspective as well. Number 5, and this might be controversial, I'm going to combine these, Smugglers Run and Rise of the Resistance. I'm combining these for a couple of reasons. One, I can barely ever get on Rise of the Resistance. The line's so long, and at least back when the California parks were open, you'd have to get to the parks at like literally 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. to get in line for this, and you wouldn't even get a reservation until later in the day. But the technology in Rise of the Resistance is really, really cool. It is probably one of the most, if not the most advanced theme park attraction that's ever been made. I'm not a huge Star Wars guy, so some of the story elements probably didn't play with me as well as someone who is a big Star Wars fan. The technological elements are really, really fantastic. Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run is a great ride. However, the re-rideability is very, very poor. This is coming from someone who's ridden this ride probably 20 or 30 times. So for a normal guest, I'm sure it's great. After you ride this ride that many times, there are some rides where I can do that and not get bored. This one, it's really, really repetitive. But these rides are still fantastic nonetheless, and they are huge, huge showings of the new theme park technologies. Number 4 is going to be subscribing to the Ultimate Airtime YouTube channel. That's not a ride, but please do subscribe and like this video if you're a huge Disney fan. And after the video, comment below what you think of my list and my rankings. The actual number 4 is Big Thunder Mountain. This was another of my childhood favorites, but if you sit in the very, very back, it's a very fun ride experience. I think that's the best place to sit in my opinion. The mountain itself is really well kept. The ride itself, the coaster track, is very smooth. You only go like 20 or 30 miles per hour on this thing, but it feels like you're going 40 or 50. Get some good airtime, and the scenic elements are really awesome as well. And there's a lot of little details, like some animations in the little windows on the final like transportation track up to the brake run. It's also very comfortable to ride as well, and the queue is really well themed. Number 3 is the Matterhorn. Definitely controversial. I've heard Disney fans really mixed on this. Some people love this ride, some people hate this ride. It's something that Walt Disney got to see. Also, the technology of this ride is really, really interesting. As someone who's like kind of a coaster and theme park nerd, this was the first steel tubular track coaster. The guy who made the coaster, one of the designers, the Imagineers, actually had to teach himself trigonometry in order to make the coaster. For its time in 1959 when it would have been built, this is truly a really big accomplishment. It's a very bumpy ride, for sure, which I love. I like bumpy roller coasters. Not a lot of people do. But in the case for me, I found this to be more thrilling as opposed to harming the experience. I also do love the theming and the ambiance around the Matterhorn as well. The yodeling music, the lift hill and the cave, and then the giant Yeti reaching out at you as you're going down on the turns, then to the water splash down at the end. There's a lot of little scenic elements that I love about this ride as well. Number 2 is Indiana Jones. This one's kind of hit or miss because sometimes not all of the scenic elements are working. But when they're all working, this ride is fantastic. The ride vehicle itself moves up and down as you're going on the ride, meaning like the actual cab you're in will tilt forward and tilt backwards while the wheels of the ride are still going forward. The ride itself has a lot of stops and turns. It really keeps you on edge and paying attention. And they used kind of this element of the ride vehicle to really put forth the story. They got fire effects. They have like this one part of the ride when you see the giant ball, walls move instead of you to make it look like you're going backwards, and you have the giant ball in front of you. Technologically, this ride is great when everything is working. The queue is really well themed, and it has a little bit of interactivity in it as well. And overall, it's just one of my favorite ride experiences. Now time for some honorable mentions. The Mad Tea Party, or the Teacups, always been a favorite of mine. You get a couple of college kids on this thing and you'll be spinning so fast. Peter Pan, Pinocchio, and Snow White. I didn't include these on the list because these aren't ones I usually hit when I personally visit. Snow White was just redone, so I'm obviously not going to include it on this list. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is really fun. Has kind of a dark story to it, but fun nonetheless. It's a Small World is another one that Walt Disney touched, and I ride it for that reason. And the last honorable mention, and probably the most obvious one that I've missed so far, are Splash Mountain. This is probably my personal favorite ride. It's probably the most near and dear to my heart. I've loved this ride all through my childhood. It is on its way out in a few years. I love the music, I love the ride, I love the story. However, in the interest of keeping this list relevant, I'm leaving it off the list and putting in the honorable mentions instead. But I do absolutely love this ride. Moving on to the number 1 spot, Space Mountain. The normal version, meaning not Hyperspace Mountain, Space Mountain with the music that syncs up with the ride. This is another ride I've ridden all through my childhood. It's by far one of the most popular, if not the most popular ride in Disneyland, besides maybe Rise of the Resistance now. The layout is smooth. The music they play on this ride is absolutely beautiful. It syncs up with your movements as you go through the layout, and I love that about the ride. Like the Matterhorn, the layout itself only goes like 30 miles an hour, but it makes it feel like you're shooting through space and going 50. They have stars everywhere. And the exterior of the ride, while being kind of odd, is very visually pleasing. This ride gets my number 1 spot. What do you think of my list? Let me know in the comments below if you disagree with me, or if you want to put your list down below too, that'd be awesome. Like this video if you want Disneyland to reopen like I do, or if you agree with me on this list, or if you just enjoyed the video in general. And follow me on Instagram at Ultimate Airtime. It means a lot. I post there every day. Pictures of my theme park trips, daily trivia on my story, different informational posts about theme parks. It means a lot if you follow me over there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.